Would you walk a righteous path without the promise of heaven, paradise, streets paved in gold? Would you stay your sister, your brother name for another man's greed? 'Cause if you believe that your God is better than another man, how you gon' end all your suffering? 'Cause if you believe that your God is better than another woman, how you gon' end all your suffering and strife? You believe great God gon' come from the sky, take away everything and make everybody feel high. But if you know life is a word, you look for yours here on earth. It's at hand. 'Cause if you believe that your God is better than another man, how you gon' end all your suffering? 'Cause if you believe that your God say I guide you, forgiveness and love. Forgiveness and love. Forgiveness and love. Good afternoon, everybody. We want to get started in about 2 to 3 more minutes. Okay? How's everybody? I'm going to open up the panel. I'm actually working on getting me an actual call-in number, y'all. So when I do the case tomorrow, there's actually another case that's similar, right, to this case, to the Gregory Green case. And this is one of those cases, y'all, where I think I had more questions than I had answers. Because when I tell y'all this case is a fucking doozy, it's a fucking doozy. Now, y'all know that a lot of these shows have sort of like become popular. Like when you have the whole, there's a whole genre that does commentary on these prison shows. But let me ask y'all, could you date somebody, or would you date? Just say yay or nay. If you would date a dude, could you date somebody that was in prison? Let's answer that question first. Because in order to understand the tragic outcome of this case, you got to start at the beginning. And that's where this case began, as it relates to Gregory Green, right? Gregory Green and Faith Harris Green. And I want to talk about how sometimes different beliefs that we hold on to can affect the way that the decisions that we make as far as relationships. Because I think that there was several different dynamics playing out in this case. Love during lockdown, right? See, one of the things that came out or that we found out about a lot of the guys that actually go to prison is that they're actually in prison with boyfriends. Gay for the stay. And then they come out and carry on relationships with the women that they were with before they went to prison, as well as women that they meet when they're getting out of prison that don't know anything about their history. Now, one of the things that the DOC started doing, because the DOC realistically just don't give a fuck at the end of the day. And if you get caught with having sex in prison, they contact your family and make your family aware of the fact that you got caught in prison. And I'm talking about the male inmates. Now, when it comes to the sexual assault in prison, I don't think it's, I think a lot of people, I think that, yes, that was a real thing at one time. But I think there's also a demographic of people that just give it up because they're fearful. But anywhere you use a cell phone, anywhere you use a telephone in prison, there's actually a number that you can call if you have been the victim of sexual assault in prison. Or you're supposed to be able to go to somebody, whether it's the nurse, whether it's another CO, that's supposed to be an automatic red flag for them to basically pay attention to that because of all the attention that prison and jailhouse rapes have gotten. But again, a lot of times people are not, I'm not going to say that there are not instances of where people have been sexually assaulted in prison, because that certainly has happened, right? Without their consent. But a lot of times they actually just go along with the flow. There are people that go into prison that automatically acquiesce to whoever the jailhouse booty bandit is, because they don't want to get fucked up physically. They don't want to get beat up. So they just give it up. Okay? But that's a whole nother live stream. But a part of what was, a part of what has come to the light is that a lot of these dudes that are on the streets presenting as if they're straight, they actually have boyfriends in prison. And during the AIDS epidemic, a lot of heterosexual women were coming up HIV positive. And they were actually being infected by men who were living down low lives that weren't disclosing to their partners that they were actually involved in same-sex relationships. So that's and the point is that that's one of the reasons why a lot of women were kind of like, one of the reasons why this awareness came around women being involved with men that were incarcerated. So again, I'll ask the ladies again, would you, or could you, or put it this way, have you ever had you a prison bae? Even if you didn't meet the dude, are y'all aware? And this is something that I found during my research.
Some of these motherfuckers that have murdered more than one motherfucker are actually on. No. They're not on dating sites. You know where they are? They have actual pen pal sites where you have individuals that are on death row. No. They're not seeking legal account. They're not seeking legal assistance. They're seeking a woman romantically. I was flabbergasted when I found out that that serial killers actually have these fucking groupies. That for some reason, it doesn't matter. We know the Menendez brothers got married from behind prison, from prison. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, the California Night Stalker, this motherfucker got married in prison. So we know that it does happen. And that even when I covered the Taco Bell case, it blew my mind to realize that this man had murdered this many women. Nonetheless, now he's on death row in North Carolina. However, he has married in prison. And how many women has this dude murdered? Not only did he murder, but he R-worded the women and murdered them. But nonetheless, he got married again. So we definitely know that it's something that happens, right? That they have these women that I don't know what the rationalization or not only the rationalization, what the fuck is the fascination with a serial killer? That's almost a live stream in and of itself. But like I said, in order to understand this case, this is one of those cases where I was very conflicted. Because Faith Harris Green, let me move this stand out of the way. I'm sorry, y'all, if y'all hear those I got my I got my bangles on today. But hold on. And I got some upcoming live streams, y'all, I'm going to be doing on camera. Hold on. I got some really nice backdrops and stuff like that I'm ordering. Let me move this out of the way. So when I saw this, I'm like, I was conflicted on so many fucking levels, y'all, because let's start with the first. Let me show you a picture of Faith Green. Gregory Green is actually in the thumbnail. This is him as well here. And I wanted to know, who was it yesterday? It was interesting that the person said that he was a monster. And I want to see whether or not the person going to fess up to it again today. The person admitted that he was a monster, but they said that he was nice looking. So I'm saying to myself, I think that's what entraps some of the sisters. That's what entraps some of the sisters. And I'm thinking to myself now, hold on for a second, y'all. Give me 1 second. Let me get to this banner and move this banner out of the way. Now, tomorrow when I go live, I should actually have a call-in number, y'all. For individuals that don't want to hit the link, and should forever, for any reason, if a person calls in with anything or gets on the panel with the attempt to deviate or to divert the stream, you're going to be booted off. Okay. Hey, Scorpio Stings. Let me just go through the chat and acknowledge y'all, because I always say that, and then when I listen to the stream, I'm like, well, goddamn, I forgot to go back through the stream and acknowledge everybody that was in the chat. Fashionista, I saw JV in the chat earlier. What's up, sis? Center focused. No one cares. Virginia Redbone, Hanlon Jones. Now, mind y'all, I'm streaming from more than one channel. So if you don't see the person in whatever chat room you're in, then they're probably in another chat room. But because I'm streaming from StreamYards, I can actually see them. Sexy Star, good morning. Or good afternoon, I should say. It's 12:17 on according to East Coast Standard Time. Zeus Flip, Warme, Josiah's Growth, Dimitri 6166. Hello. Hey, Tisa. Let me see. Queen of the South, one of the baddest female moderators in the land. Hey, the mean girl. Angelia Hunter. California girl. The Queen Rules. Paul Graves. User not found. Naima the Sun Goddess. Shady. My sis Eunice Outland. Mia. My sis Brandy Davis. Me and Brandy, hey Scorpio's things, hey the Joy Queen. Listen, me and Brandy was talking, y'all. We was talking about this. I was talking with JV about it too, but this case was crazy because I just couldn't comprehend. Hello, Problematic. What would make y'all? Here's the thing. This is Mr. Gregory Green here, right? And the reason why I hashtag serial spouse killer is because, hey, Nisa, is because this is what this dude is. Do y'all remember the movie The Stepfather? It gave me the whole, and that's what I told Brandy. It gave me those stepfather. Y'all remember the movie The Stepfather, where he would be fine until people would start to ask too many questions, and then he would just start killing motherfuckers? It didn't matter whether it was a neighbor, like somebody would get inquisitive. And I think one of the things that I found the most disturbing about the case is that not that the family didn't have any right to secrecy, but I felt that because of the tragic outcome of the case, there were some really tough questions that I think the media may have been afraid to ask this woman. Because not only was she also a victim, but ultimately her children were. But let's take it back to the beginning. The defendant that you see up here on the screen, he was initially married to this woman. This is his first wife. Her name is Tonya Clayton Green. And she was married to Gregory Green. He actually murdered his first wife when she was 6 months pregnant. He stabbed her 10 times with a steak knife. There were actually 2 other minor children in the house from a previous relationship that were unharmed. He basically contacted 911 and said, listen, I've killed my wife. She's in the kitchen on the floor, deceased. He was taken into custody. He initially tried to plead insanity. He then recanted that plea and pled no contest. He was allowed to plead no contest to brutally murdering. I didn't know that no contest actually was applicable in that type of in a homicide. But nonetheless, this dude was allowed to plead no contest to the murder of his wife. And he was in prison for about 14 years. Now, according to statements made later on, it became evident that what she intended to do, she actually suspected him of being on drugs. And she had told the girlfriend of hers, listen, I'm going to church. When I go home, I'm basically going to pack my shit and leave this guy. And she never got the opportunity. Again, one of the people that spoke out later on, they were flabbergasted that this dude was out of jail in the first place. Again, she was 6 months pregnant with his child. 2 other minor children were in the house, one of which actually spoke out later on when it was almost a deja vu of the crime that he committed with his first wife. What was so fucking mind-boggling about the situation is that, sometimes now, Faith Harris Green, her father, her daddy was actually a preacher. Okay. So a lot of times churches, a part of their ministry is to do outreach in prison. So I remember initially thinking, okay, well, he was doing the father, Apostle Fred Harris. Okay. I remember thinking that maybe he was doing prison outreach in the prison, and that is how he came to cross paths with Mr. Gregory Green. Oh, but that's not what happened. That is not what happened. Let's take a look at, give me 1 second. Again, this is the defendant, right? In custody, Gregory Green. This is his first wife that he murdered, that he stabbed 10 times with a kitchen knife when she was 6 months pregnant with his child. Okay. Now, this is Apostle Apostle Fred Harris and his wife. That's not Faith Harris Green's biological mother. It's actually her stepmother. Okay. Now, let's look at a picture of Faith. Where is that picture of Faith? I think that's after the fact. Okay. And this here, wait a minute, let me show you another picture before I show you that one. I don't want to show you that one just yet. This is Faith, right? With her children. This is a family photograph of Faith with her children. And if you look at the pictures, it's a beautiful family. It's loading up. If you look at the pictures, that's Faith's daughter, Kara, 17, her son, Chadney Allen, Kara Allen in the black dress. That's Faith Green in the red top. That's her eldest son, Chadney Allen. That's Coy and Kayla. So these are her 4 children, and this is Faith, right? And happier times, right? So I actually thought that Faith's father had come across this man as a result of him doing his prison outreach, until I started doing the research and I said, you have got to be kidding me. So as this dude is in jail, and I'm talking about Gregory Green, as he's in jail for the murder of his first wife, when I saw that he, as a pastor, had written letters to the parole board, I'm just assuming that it's kind of like, okay, something that pastors do sometimes when inmates fiend that they have found redemption through the Lord and stuff like that. And it's a part of the manipulation to get the priest, the pastor, or whoever to write the prison administration a letter, or the parole board a letter on their behalf to get them released. Oh, but when I started peeling back the veil, this man actually appealed on this man's behalf twice, in detail, in documents that I'm going to show you in the news story, for this man's release. And what he said was that he and Gregory Green were friends prior to his incarceration. He was actually a parishioner of Apostle Fred Harris's church. Now, I wasn't able to get any specifics about that. Got me to wondering, well, hell, was Tanya Clayton Green, was she also, because remember, the night she was murdered, she was going to go to church. According to her girlfriend, she was going to go to church, go home, pack her shit, and leave this dude, because he had started behaving erratically, and she had started to become fearful of him, and she suspected him of being on drugs. She told the girlfriend as much. Again, she never got the opportunity. Even when I started trying to dig for more specifics around her murder, there really was not a lot of information. It was basically like, husband stabs pregnant wife, 6 months pregnant with his child, to death, stabs 10 times, calls the police, reports the murder, turns himself in, and that was the end. And we don't have to do a whole bunch of speculation as to why that was. So I'll read the articles. And it says, in 2 letters supporting Green's release, Pastor Harris described his future son-in-law as a former congregant and friend. No. He's not just saying this is a man that was a parishioner, that he was a congregant. He's saying this is his friend. And the preacher, whose inner healing and deliverance ministry focuses on prayer and counseling to make salvation fully effective in all dimensions of our life and character. He described, listen, y'all, he described Green's murder of his first wife, Tanya, as a mishap. Hold that thought. And promised at one point that Green, when he got out of prison, he was going to rejoin his church, which solidifies the fact that he was already a congregant, right? And be given whatever help he needed to adjust. Well, apparently, a part of that help that the pastor thought Mr. Green needed to adjust to society was his daughter. Maybe that was going to help him make his transition. Because Gregory Green married the pastor's daughter 2 years after him getting out of prison. And those 4 beautiful children that you see in that picture. When he met Faith Green, there were only 2 children, Chadney and Kara, from her previous marriage. The 4 and the 6-year-old were actually biological children conceived between Faith Harris Green and Gregory Green. And it made me wonder, what in the fuck? I said, y'all, this is one of those cases where I said, what rationalization could you fucking have? What explanation could a man pull out of his ass that would lead you to believe not only would this be a good stepfather for your children, but that this motherfucker would make you a good goddamn husband? When he stabbed a woman 6 months pregnant with his goddamn child to death. Here's the thing, y'all. When he was in prison, the first time past Apostle Harris appealed on his behalf, right? He was still denied. Why do y'all think the parole board denied this dude getting out? They denied because he had no remorse. And you'll see that in the articles. He was rejected the first time. He had been rejected 4 fucking times. And the reason was because he lacked insight into the impact of his fucking crime. As a matter of fact, one of the parole officials that was assigned to determine whether or not he should get parole said that he blamed his victim. But after 16 years, 2 letters from Apostle Fred Harris, Faith Green's daddy, he was released. So what was so confusing was, you mean to tell me this motherfucker sat in prison for 14 years? He didn't show a single ounce of remorse. And all of a goddamn sudden, 2 years after the fact, he's found remorse. He didn't find 14 years sitting his ass in prison. Listen, twice. Passer pleaded for his release twice. And it got me to thinking, was Faith, mind you, this is a part of the secrecy that was around people not asking questions because of the outcome of the case. People didn't really ask a lot of tough questions because I wanted to know whether or not she was dating this motherfucker before he got out of prison. I just didn't see him getting out of prison. Now the daddy writing to prison on his behalf for him to get out of prison. A part of his prison ministry was to go do prison outreach. And sometimes when they go to do the prison outreach, they bring people, they bring other congregants into the prison to help them with service and things like that. As long as they can pass the background checks and all of that stuff like that, they're allowed to accompany them to the prison. But they're usually like in an isolated part of the prison. They allow all different I guess, demographic, all different religions. It wouldn't matter if it was a Muslim. It wouldn't matter if it was a Buddhist. It wouldn't matter if it was a Jewish person. They allow all different, it didn't matter if they were Catholic. They allow different, they have different types of religious services in prison. Like there's not just one particular religion. Okay. Sometimes they have an imam inside of the prison that's actually an inmate, and they can also have an imam on the outside of the prison for those that are Islamic or or Muslim. So I wanted to know that. Like, okay, but that part again, and I don't think that was by accident. And I've watched interviews of there's no question that she also was a victim, right? And that what she experienced with this predator was dramatic. There's no question about that. But I also felt that she was also very evasive. Very evasive. And I don't believe that was by accident. So that's the way he described the murder, a man that actually murdered his first wife, as a mishap. Now, it says it's unclear whether Faith had known Gregory prior to this or whether or not Tanya was also a member of Pastor Harris's church before Green killed her. And I don't believe that was by accident. I believe that they intentionally were very vague about that information. And what the father said, what Apostle Fred Harris said when he appealed to the parole board on Gregory Green's behalf is Gregory and I were friends before this mishap. And he was, and prior, it's basically a typo, before his incarceration. And that's what he wrote the parole board on August the 17th of 2005. I feel he has paid for his unfortunate lack of self-control and the Now, this is weird because that's still up there on the screen. Well, maybe that's because thank you guys for waiting. I'm sorry, y'all. I had to refresh my refresh my browser. Welcome everybody to everybody that came in. Okay? But this is like one of those this I'm going to have a call-in number, and I'm just going to look out if you guys have any um tips that you can give for any call numbers or any services that offer call-in numbers. Let me know. Okay, so that way if a person doesn't want to actually hit the link, they can actually call in. Hold on. Okay, so again, I just was trying to I couldn't even wrap my mind around. It doesn't matter what epiphany he had or what coming to Christ moment that he had. Would there be, or could there be, any fucking epiphany or coming to Christ moment that a man could have, even as a pastor? And this is where a lot of the spiritual things, that spiritual beliefs, what came to mind was the part of Sandra L. Brown, the woman who wrote Women Who Love Psychopaths and Narcissists. She's also the author of saferelationshipsmagazine.com or .org, I believe. She talked about things that make women prime targets for these type of predators. And one of the ways that they're often able to wriggle their way into the lives of women, or like the Bernie Madoffs, that's often a way that they use to be able to get access to targets. Not only do we know that certain types of religious leaders, we know that religious leaders do that all the time, right? But it's also a conditioning that a lot of women have mentally. And it depends on, I think this is one of those cases where I really tried not to pass judgment on Faith. I wanted to hear what her side of the story was as to why, what rationalization would you make? Because see, it wouldn't just be her, right? Because she had 2 children from a previous marriage. So it's not just you that's at stake. And even if you, for whatever reason, feel safe with this dude, what about your children? Moreover, to go on and to have 2 children with this person. Now, at some point, again, like I said, there's certain, it's almost as if there are certain blocks of time that's fucking missing from the story. Because it kind of like fast forwards after they get married. There's little to any information other than the fact that 2 years after he was released, finally, after being denied 4 times parole for his lack of remorse regarding the murder of his first wife, that they start to have some sort of marital problems sometime down the line, shortly before the tragedy. And she files for divorce a month before the tragedy. But it wasn't actually the first time that she had filed for divorce. She had actually filed for divorce several years prior. And the reason in the justification that she gave was that the paperwork didn't go through. But at some point, she petitions for a protection from abuse order. She goes to the court and says her husband is basically trying to force her out of their family home, and that he was kicking things. However, one of the things that he was kicking was the couch with her toddler on it. I don't know why the courts did not do a background investigation, because usually in domestic court or family court, they have an advocate there to often speak to the court and to advocate to the court on behalf of the victim to help them get the restraining order. For whatever reason, nobody does a background check on this dude. Because if they done a background check on him, they would have realized this dude killed his first wife. So I'm not understanding why she ultimately was denied the restraining order. But then I got to thinking about the information, because the news actually put out the actual restraining order. And one of the things that she friggin' omitted from the restraining order was that the dude killed his first wife. So there's still that protection around she's not being candid about how destitute of a situation she's in. She's not saying, well, I have some concerns because he's walking around the house making threats and he's kicking the couch with our toddler on the couch. And this dude stabbed his first wife to death when she was pregnant. Y'all, that information was omitted from her request for a restraining order. So ultimately, she's denied the restraining order. One of the things that was interesting that one of the neighbors after the tragedy came out and said was that they saw some signs of abuse because he was nice to the children, but his wife, not so much. And I could believe as much, but I don't believe it was that he was nice to the children. And I'll explain why I've reached that conclusion, and you all can chime in and tell me what you think about it. Because there's this switch that I seen as I was watching him on camera with his crocodile tears and everything. Because what happens, apparently there's like some inevitable breakdown of the marriage, and she files for divorce again. A month later, Gregory Green actually executes her 17-year-old son at that time. 17-year-old daughter, Kara, and her 19-year-old son in front of her while she's duct taped in the basement. He also takes and asphyxiates his 4-year-old and 6-year-old biological children, poisoning them with carbon monoxide because he rigged the vehicle, and then takes the children upstairs, lays them in the bed as if they were sleeping, and that's the condition that the first responder found them in. There's this deja vu of the first crime with his wife, his first wife, Tonya, where he calls the police and says, I've murdered my family, and waits for the police. When the police get there, they find his wife, the second wife, tied up, duct tied in the basement. Her face is cut where he took a box cutter and left this Joker-like scar on her face, and he shot her in the foot. Now, it was interesting to me because he executes a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old. He executes both of her children in her face, and he shoots them in the head, execution style. So clearly, he didn't run out of bullets. He shot her in the foot and cut her in the face. And she's not the one who escaped and called the police. He actually is the one who called the police, So there's no doubt in my mind that he intended to leave her alive. And not only did he want to leave her alive, he wanted to leave her alive with the memories that he had executed her two children in her face and asphyxiated with carbon monoxide poisoning. That, mind you, it comes out in the evidence that he actually purchased. This guy goes to I believe it was either a Lowe's or a Home Depot, purchases the equipment to rig the car. This was premeditated. How they ultimately allowed this dude to plead to second degree murder, it's beyond my comprehension. Because clearly he planned in advance to carry out the act against her children and his children, his stepchildren. So in my opinion, he wanted her to suffer. And not only just suffer with the fact that he had robbed her of the lives of her four children, but that he wanted her to live with all of the stigma. Because there's no question, because this dude had already murdered his first wife, that she was going to come under some scrutiny and some pretty harsh judgment. Now let's look at some of the other. Let me go through some of the other. Let me go into some of the other I just said to myself again, this is a picture of Faith, her daughter Kara, her son Chadney, Coy and Kayla, and the grandfather. And this is why you can never tell based on pictures what is actually going on. And it just made me question a lot of things. Now, Faith, in my opinion, is actually an attractive woman. She was an attractive woman at the time that she would have met this creep. Whether she met him in prison or whether she met him at the father's church after the fact. That's actually Faith Harris Green. And as you can see, the scar on her face, he didn't cut her throat. He cut her face. These are the children. Coy Green, who in that photograph was 5. Kayla Green, 4. Chadney Allen, 19. Kara Allen, 17. And you can see how beautiful these children are. And this ultimately was the outcome. And it made me wonder, what rationalization or what level of desperation? Because clearly to me, from my perspective, this dude definitely had some attachment issues. Because again, when he murdered the first wife, it was because she was planning to leave him. A month before, he commits this quadruple homicide. And basically, he certainly intended to seriously maim and cripple and cause serious bodily injury to his second wife. But make no mistake about it, he wanted her alive. And he wanted her to continue to suffer. Now, the community came together because they didn't have insurance, and they paid for the funerals for the children. But I think because it did involve the murder of 4 children, that nobody really asked these people serious questions. Like, One question that I would have asked is, what did you think? How did you rationalize that this could be a person that was safe for you to have children with, much less marry and bring around your other children? He was in prison for killing his first wife. There's no, if your father appealed to the parole board the first time and he was denied, what was your father not able to basically say? Did your father, did you meet him after prison? Did you meet him while he was in prison? Did your father not tell you he was in prison for killing his first wife? I just don't, I don't believe that. I believe that she knew. And for whatever reason, she rationalized that this would be. I think a lot of women are in love with the idea of being in love and falling in love. And they believe that they have this magical love that could change a total psychopath that would stab his pregnant wife 10 times. Not only do they believe they have the magical for JJ, but they believe that their love is magical. So magical that it could change a man that did that into a respectable member of society. And it just wasn't going to happen because the dude was a psychopath. That's the reason why he had no remorse, because he wasn't sorry. When the parole board made the assessment that he blamed his victim for his crimes, that's exactly what it means. That's why he didn't have any remorse or didn't show any. He can't show remorse for something he doesn't have remorse for. So we have 5 murders. Hey, Tisa. We have 5 murders. Hey, beautiful soul. Tracy 3. Chloe. It was unfathomable to me that she would think that it was safe for her to do that. And it's almost as if the children didn't matter. The other children, well, they didn't matter. Their safety didn't matter. What mattered more is mommy having the fairy tale. And I was like, I know that's not going to be a popular opinion, but nonetheless, I really didn't know what else to think about that. And when I looked at, ultimately, this guy, he enters a guilty plea. And I want y'all to pay close attention to his facial expression from his crocodile tears when he's talking about Coy and Kayla. And I want you to see if you pick up on the shift that I picked up on when he started talking about Faith and her 2 eldest children. And then I'm going to share with you the fact, and here's the other thing. The reason why I say that they intentionally omitted information, and I'm talking about her and her father. Now, this is the house. This is the car. This is the crime scene, right? A part of the crime scene. This is the house in Dearborn Heights, Michigan. This is the crime scene where he actually murdered the 2 youngest children and then took them in the house and laid them in their beds as if they were sleeping. But the 2 eldest children he executed. That's Chadney and Kara. I'm sorry, guys, if you hear that they're doing some work on the street outside. Now let me pull up. I'm going to drop the link and see while I'm pulling up the and see if anybody wants to come up. I'm going to get a call-in number, y'all. So that way it'll be for those of you who can't join the panel. I'm going to drop the link is in the chat. Let me queue up this and the interesting thing is that one of the reporters, it seems like she was almost ready to ask the question, like what they wanted to know what the grandfather thought about all of this. They wanted to get his opinion, but of course they could hide behind, and it's not that the family wouldn't have been grieving and that the family wouldn't have been attempting to bury, there's no question that was traumatizing. But several years later, 2 years to be exact, she actually speaks out. So I was interested in that interview. And when I saw the interview, it was like, y'all, something is missing. It's just something is missing. And I want to see what you guys got from, I want to see if you guys got the same thing from the interview that I did, that she did 2 years after his guilty plea. Because again, it's deja vu. He doesn't attempt to fight the case. He pleads guilty. And by doing so, he avoids the trial. And it's wash, rinse, and repeat of his first crime. And that's just what I believe. I just don't know. It made me question: is there that because she was an attractive woman. I don't see why she didn't pursue other options as far as dating. Yes, she did have 2 children from a previous marriage. The first husband is an attractive guy, and here's the thing. The reason why I say that they were intentionally secretive. Do you realize that the father of those 2 eldest children did not know anything? Nobody knew anything, or at least nobody that spoke out knew anything about this dude's background. Her first husband, when he gave his initial interviews, he does not believe that she knew. And it's almost like the first time it's coming to his knowledge is after his children are murdered at the hands of her new husband or her current husband. And it's like he's having this epiphany while he's being interviewed. Because one minute he's saying, I don't think she knew. And then he's saying, well, how could she not know? She had 2 kids with the guy. She withheld that information from the father of the first children, that this man had murdered his first wife. But it wasn't just deception on her part, because nobody told him, apparently. So the question is, did they as a family keep that as a secret? Because the other thing that really made my ass hurt was at his guilty plea, after 4 children are deceased, you have all of these family members coming out of the woodworks. They're holding her hand while she's going to court and all of this other stuff. Where the fuck were these people to say, sis, I don't think that's a good idea? Like, where did you meet this creep from? You don't ask questions? Somebody in your family, just brings the person home and say, hey, we getting married. You don't ask any questions? Hey, where's this person's friends? Hey, where's this person's family? Well, tell me about him. He's this great guy. You should be telling me, you should be telling everybody all about him. I would think that you would want to brag about him. He's willing to come in and be a stepfather to the other two children or my other nieces and nephews. What about this dude? But they're all there in the court. Well, where were all these people beforehand? And it made me wonder if the father knew what this dude had did, how likely was it that nobody else, nobody in the community, nobody in her family, but her and her daddy knew this dude was a murderer and that he had killed his first wife when she was 6 months pregnant with his child? It just didn't make any sense. None whatsoever. Yes, her father absolutely knew Angelia Hunter because her father petitioned the parole board twice on his behalf for him to get an early release or for him to be granted parole. So her father absolutely knew. I just don't believe. I mean, it just made me question, did her and her father keep that information from everybody else? And did they know? And just kind of like walk on eggshells around the person. Like, what the fuck would make you think if he killed his first wife that this person wouldn't be next? Or that there was the potential for this dude to be dangerous? Like, what type of explanation can you give for stabbing a pregnant woman 10 times that's pregnant with your child? What rationalization could you make about that in your mind? And it's almost like they have this, it won't happen to me type of mentality. Or, yeah, well, there's something that here again, we know a lot of times the victim is blamed. Well, there's something that she must have done. There's something that she must have said. What's the first thing that they say a lot of times, especially when you're talking about a Black woman that says she's being abused? Well, it's your mouth. Well, you could have did this. Well, you should have done that. Well, if you didn't act this way. Well, if you didn't wear that. Well, the reason why you got beat is because of this or because of that. That's kind of like what happens. And it made me think about that. That could be the only type of rationalization you can make. There would be nothing under the fucking sun. A man who stabbed his first wife when she was pregnant with his child. I don't care if she wasn't pregnant. There would be nothing that he could say that would make me trust him enough to be around him, right? Much less bring him around my goddamn kids. Nothing. And I just don't understand that. So a lot of times, the other impression is that, well, if the daddy was there, this happened because it wasn't no daddy in the house. See, this is the reason why all of this stuff, you don't have two-parent homes. Ain't no daddy there. Well, in this instance, daddy was there. Daddy was an established member of the community, of the society. Apparently, he was a well-liked pastor. Daddy knew, and daddy petitioned the parole board twice on a convicted murderer's behalf to help the murderer get out of prison. And then daddy walked his daughter down the aisle and gave her away to the convicted murderer, and by default, his two grandchildren. And as a result of that, their 4 children 6 feet in the ground who didn't have a choice in the matter. Clearly, you had adults that were 100% cognizant of aware of what was going on. It's the children who weren't taken into consideration. They didn't matter. What mattered more is about these appearances of the white picket fence and the intact family and a black woman being marriage material or being marriable, whatever. Yeah, I just made that word up. And it was mind blowing to me. Let me go through the news. Let me show you. When I go through, let's listen to, before I go, I'm going to do it kind of like in reverse. And although this may seem like an isolated case, I promise you it's not. Where you have women that deal with, and this is the story that I'm going to cover tomorrow. Here's another woman, Carolyn Thomas Hall, who died at the hands of this man who has since been executed. Now, he made the mistake of committing his heinous act in Texas, and he's now deceased. Because Texas ain't playing with your ass. So it's bye-bye birdie. Okay? This dude was executed. Now, what's interesting about that case is that when it comes to the Rayford death penalty case, he actually had a diagnosis. Okay? He was a male borderline. And the similarity of the case is he also had already killed a previous spouse. And this was a woman that he was dating. And he brutally murdered her as well. Again, when they attempt to leave these dudes, and mind y'all, he had not been dating her for a very long time. Did she know about his background with him killing his first wife? Absolutely. She absolutely did. And I guess the question that was lingering in my mind is, what rationalization could you make? What would make you think that you could not be in that woman's shoes? It was mind blowing to me, y'all. Okay, let me pull up the let me cue up the the audio, and I don't know if give me 1 second. I wanted y'all to see him, Gregory Green, at his guilty hearing, at the guilty plea. And let me cue it up. And I want y'all to see whether or not y'all pick up the same thing that I picked up. And it was like, even while he was talking, there was a visible shift. And I'll show y'all some more pictures of Faith. This is the guilty hearing plea. And I'm going to have to, you can watch it from I'm going to share the screen so you can watch it. But for whatever reason, I have to figure out how to sync my, the audio with the video, because every time I try that on StreamYards, for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. And I'm not certain as to why that is. But I'll share the screen and I'll play. You're going to hear me talking a little bit in the front, but it'll play. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, hold on. This is Case Closed with the Cookie Monster. This is going to Case Closed with the Cookie Monster. This is going to be the guilty plea hearing of Gregory Green regarding the quadruple homicide and the attempted murder of his wife, his second wife, Faith Harris Green. And he's going to make a statement, and it's just to document basically what the outcome of his guilty plea. This would actually be his second guilty plea. The first guilty plea regarding the murder of his first wife, Tonya Clayton Green. She was 6 months pregnant with his child, and he brutally stabbed her to death and basically left her body in the kitchen, went outside, basically contacted 911, reported that he had murdered his wife. And when the police arrived on scene, it was almost like a deja vu of the quadruple homicide, where he attempted to at least seriously injure and maim his second wife, Faith Harris Green, and he had brutally murdered her 4 children. 2 of her children he executed in front of her with a handgun. The 2 which were 2 children from a previous marriage, his 2 biological children, he actually, and it comes out in the prosecution's closing argument, that Gregory Green actually had taken the time to go to a Home Depot. He actually went to a local hardware store to basically buy the equipment to rig the vehicle in which he killed his 2 biological children through carbon monoxide poisoning. Basically, they were asphyxiated to death. And he then at that point takes the children upstairs, lies them in the bed as if they're sleeping. And that was the condition that the first responders found the children in when they arrived on scene after the 911 call. So let's listen to what the outcome, let's listen to the guilty plea hearing, and let's listen to what his statements are. And there's a shift that takes place as he's attempting to feign some sort of remorse. And what I noted was that there was a shift when he began talking about, he's actually able to muster some crocodile tears with regards to the murder of his 2 biological children. Because he attempts to be very vague about it. However, when he's poked and prodded to give a little bit more detail, and the judge is very adamant about him being specific about the murder of the children, there's a shift when he starts talking about Faith's 2 children from a previous relationship, the 17, Kara and Shadney Allen from the previous marriage. There's a shift when he starts talking about the 2 eldest children and when he starts talking about Faith. Now, that's just my opinion, but I'm interested in hearing what you all think of his statement, whether or not you believe this is genuine remorse or whether it's fiend remorse. So let's get into it. Okay, y'all. I'm going to start playing, and that was a pre-recording, y'all, because I'm having, you remember I told you I'm having trouble with the audio. So let's start with the, I'm going to let it play. I have to let it play simultaneously. I got to figure out how to do this.
You now have a plea, is that right, counsel?
That's my understanding, Judge.
That is correct. And he wants to state the terms of the plea, please.
I will, Your Honor. It's my understanding that the defendant is prepared to accept the settlement offer of the people today, whereby You will tender a plea of guilty to the following charges. Count 1, murder in the second degree of Kaylee Green. Count 2, murder in the second degree of Coy Green. Count 3, murder in the second degree of Kara Allen. Count 4, murder in the second degree of Channing Allen. Count 5, torture. Count 6, assault with intention to great bodily harm less than murder. Count 10, felony firearm. The people will agree pursuant to the plea to withdraw the individual second notice to enhance sentence. We will also agree to dismiss counts 7, 8, and 9, which are unlawful imprisonment, felony possession of a firearm, and felonious assault. This plea also has written into it a sentence agreement whereby if this court does accept the guilty pleas of the defendant, he would be sentenced to a term of 45 years to 100 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections, plus 2 years consecutive for the felony firearm charge.
Counsel, is that a correct rendition of the settlement agreement? It is. All right, Mr. Green, do you understand what's going on today? Yes. All right, and can you understand the English language, sir? Yes, sir. And can you hear and understand me, sir? Yes. And how old are you, sir? 15. And how far did you go with your education, sir? 12. Do you consent to allowing the district court to accept the felony plea on your behalf, on behalf of the circuit court pursuant to court rules, sir? Yes, sir. And does the defense so consent? We do. And prosecutor?
Yes, sir.
And sir, Mr. Green, are you a citizen of the United States? Yes. And do you understand if you had a prior felony, there could be an increase in the maximum sentence? I know this is a settlement agreement, but do you understand that, sir? Yes. And he's not on probation or parole right now, is he?
No, Judge.
Okay. And you have offered to plead guilty in this matter. Before accepting your plea, the court must be convinced that you understand the following. Okay, sir? Yes, sir. If our plea is accepted, you will not have a trial of any kind, and you will be giving up the rights you would have at trial, including the right to be tried by a jury. Do you understand that, sir? Yes, sir. To be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Do you understand that, sir? Yes. Do you have the prosecutor prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty? Do you understand that, sir? Yes. Do you have the witnesses against you appear at trial? Do you understand that, sir? Yes. To question the witnesses against you? Do you understand that, sir? Yes. Do you have the court order any witnesses you have for the defense to appear at the trial? Do you understand that, sir? Yes. To remain silent during the trial? Do you understand that, sir? Yes. To not have that silence used against you? Do you understand that, sir? And to testify at a trial if you want to testify. Do you understand that, sir? Yes, sir. If your plea is accepted, any appeal from your conviction and sentence pursuant to this plea will be by application for leave to appeal and not by right. Do you understand that, sir? Yes, sir. You will be required to state orally on the record that you have read and understood all of the above and that you agree to waive all of the above rights pursuant to the advice of rights form. Does he have a copy of that rights form?
Yes, he does, Your Honor.
Okay, yes. Do you agree, sir? Yes. You also have a right to have an attorney present throughout the trial, and you do have an attorney. You understand that? Have you had adequate opportunity to discuss this matter with your attorney, sir? Yes. Are you satisfied with the services of your attorney at this time? Yes, sir. Now, there are 3 types of pleas: guilty, not guilty, no contest. Do you understand that? Yes. Is there anything the court has said up to this point that you do not understand and which you would like to have explained further? No.
It'll come back on, y'all. I'm sorry.
Is your plea the result of the agreement between you, your attorney, and the prosecuting attorney? Is that correct, sir? Yes. Are there any other terms to the agreement that you know, sir? No, sir. Can you understand the nature of the offenses that you're pleading guilty to, sir? Yes. And you understand the maximum sentence that could be imposed in this case. You understand that? Therefore, sir, as to the charge of murder in the second degree regarding Kaylee Green, how do you wish to plead? Guilty, sir. As to the charge of murder in the second degree as to Coy Green, how do you wish to plead? Guilty, sir. As to the charge of murder in the second degree as to Kara Allen, how do you wish to plead? Guilty. As to murder in the second degree as to Chadley Allen, how do you wish to plead? Guilty. As to the charge of torture in count 5, sir, how do you wish to plead? Guilty. As to the charge of assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than the crime of murder as to Faith Green, And, sir, how do you wish to plead to that? Guilty. And as to the torture, it was as to Faith Green. It's just.
Yes, sir.
Okay. As to the charge of felony firearms, sir, count 10, how do you wish to plead to that? Guilty. Is that the defense counsel's understanding of the total agreement? That's correct, yes. And is that the prosecutor's understanding of the total agreement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Aside from that agreement, did anyone promise you anything in the way of favor, leniency, probation, or anything else to get you to plead guilty, sir? No, sir. Did anyone threaten you in any way to get you to plead guilty, sir? No, sir. Did anyone indicate what your sentence would actually be except for the agreement that was placed on the record, sir? No, sir. Is it your own choice to plead guilty today? Yes, it is. Do you plead guilty because, in fact, you did commit the act with which you are charged? Yes, sir. Right. Please raise your right hand, sir. You solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes. All right. Can you tell the court, in your own words, what you did on or about September 21st, 2016, as to count one, murder in the second degree, Kaylee Green? Unfortunately, I took the life of Kaylee Green and Corey Green, Jamie and Kara, the skeleton children. Is felony firearm shot my ex-wife in Florida. Okay, well, you indicated you took the life of Kaylee Green, Corey Green, Kara Allen, and Chadwick Allen. Is that correct, sir? Yes. All right. You took the life. How did you take their life, sir? I went to the girls in the car. And there's this guy, Carol outside. And Karen and Chadwick shot down.
Now, did y'all see the shift that I was talking about? Now, it's a little out of sync, so I'll post the link to the actual video on YouTube. I'll post the link, and in that way you can see in sync, because it looks like it's a little out of sync to me, because I'm playing the video, but I'm playing the audio from the pre-recording. There was a shift, and he almost opened up his eyes when they were asking him about the torture, the cutting, and the shooting in the foot of the wife. And there's also a shift when he starts talking about the two eldest children. The only time that he starts to fiend being choked up is when he's talking about the youngest two children, his two biological children. But let's go on.
Communicated by carbon monoxide in my shot. Is that correct, sir? Yes. Which children did you do with carbon monoxide? Corey and Kayla. Green. And you poisoned them by carbon monoxide? Yeah. They were poisoned. What they say. And as a result of the poisoning, and they died. What about Chad Reed and Katie? I shot them both and they passed. That's what he got.
May I wonder, Your Honor, maybe it'll help expedite.
I'm sorry, y'all. What this bastard says is that, he basically says that when he's asked about the two eldest children, Kara and Chadney, the 17 and the 19-year-old, he says they passed, I shot them, they passed and went away with God. And I was watching this like, did this guy just start demonstrating behaviors or manifesting behaviors that he was a damn psychopath towards the end of the relationship or towards the end of the marriage? Or were there clearly red flags there that were ignored? Clearly, the hugest red flag of them all was the fact that the dude had already murdered his first wife. That was the hugest. If ever there was a red flag, that would have been a red flag that the person killed their previous spouse in a very heinous, cold-blooded fashion. But clearly, there were some red flags that were ignored. And this guy is giving me the whole looking for the Christian girl to prey upon. STL, what's up, boo? This dude is giving me the whole Christian girl that will believe that I can redeem my way, redeem the evil, that I can have that aha coming to Christ moment. He want him a good Christian girl. And see, what did it remember? The first wife was murdered. She was going to go to church. It's never clear about whether or not she was also a congregant of Pastor Fred Harris's church. There's no clarity provided on that. But clearly, she was a religious person. And I just think that sometimes that spirituality and the belief that there's a redemption. Somebody said, I'm not certain if it was in a comment. I can't remember exactly where I saw this comment at, but somebody said that Christian Mingle is probably one of the absolute worst sites for dating online because of the amount of predators that are on that website. And that's not a coincidence. That's by design. Because what a lot of women don't realize is that when it comes to NSPs, and I use the acronym NSP for narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths, the very things that make you a good woman also makes you a perfect target as a primary source of narcissistic supply. And I don't know if a lot of women understand that. A lot of times women are auditioning. I can cook, I can clean, I can sex, I can do this, I can do that. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. However, we have to be mindful that when it comes to a certain archetype of predator, those are the very characteristics that they look for in a woman. They're always going to test you. They don't just end up with the people that they end up with for absolutely no reason. That's why I plugged Sandra's book that I think I read that book in 2007. It's worth its weight in gold. It's Women Who Love Psychopaths and Narcissists. And the amount of women that have been victimized by these type of predators is to such a degree that she actually had to revise that book because there's so many victims. And in the age of awareness, where you have so much awareness around NSP abuse, what they're doing is actually tweaking their methods of operation so that they can remain under the radar and operate more stealthily. But I want the sisters to be mindful of that. The very things that make you a good woman. There's nothing wrong with cooking a home-cooked meal. There's nothing wrong with keeping a good home. There's nothing wrong with satisfying your partner or your significant other or your husband sexually. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. However, we do have to be mindful that those very things make you the perfect target. That high tolerance, that hyper empathy, as Sandra L. Brown describes it. Being overly compassionate, overly forgiving. struggles with codependency, being an empath. All of that stuff puts a target in the middle of your head and in the middle of your back. And we'll get into, a little bit more into that. I thought about that when I came across a video I did. I want to say it might have been August of 2018, where I was saying that very thing. The very things that make you a good woman also is a part of that checklist that an NSP is going to go through, because they have to make sure, right, that these are individuals that come into relationships, any type of interaction with other human beings, with a mind map of how they're going to manipulate the situation, what they're going to get from the person, what they want from the person. They come into the situation with an agenda. And sometimes there's certain times when you can be extremely susceptible and vulnerable. For instance, if you are a newly divorced woman, if you are fresh out of a relationship, if there has been, because a lot of times women believe that, the last time I was in a relationship was 4 years ago. The last time I had sex was X, Y, and Z amount ago. That has nothing to do with the fact that if there hasn't been a healing, and if that person hasn't done the work, all of those core wounds and unhealed traumas from that previous toxic relationship are still there. That's why I gave the analogy of a crook walking down the street. If it's a burglar and they're walking down the street and all of the other houses are fortified with security systems. Well, he's not going to, he know that those, the valuables that are on the other side of that door, the assets like your empathy, your actual assets, your ass, in your literal ass, in your gluteus maximus, okay? Those type of assets, your valuables, the things that you bring to a relationship as a woman are consider them the figurative assets that are on the other side of that door. Okay. And the burglar is walking down the street looking for a house that's going to be an easy lick to hit. If they see that all of the other houses are impregnable, he can't get in. They're fortified with security systems. They have motion detectors, the whole nine. And he sees a door that's ajar or cracked, or a window that's cracked that hasn't been repaired, indicative of some damage that has occurred that has not been fixed, or a back door that's already kicked in. That's an easy lick. And NSPs test women the same way in relationships. And they do that very early on. So stop always thinking that because you're passed over, it's because there's something inherently wrong with you. Simply because you're passed over. That could be a blessing that you're not even realizing. That could be a bullet that you're actually dodging. Okay? So let's go through going to finish up in closing and just because I got a few more minutes. I told you guys I want to keep this under 2 hours. Okay, so let's continue.
Due to the number of charges that we have. Okay, Mr. Green, I'm just going to ask you some questions and answer the question. You are under oath. Each question that I ask you, and if you need to confer with your attorney in between, let Mr. Longstreet know. Okay. As to counts 1, murder in the second degree of Kaylee Green, count 2, murder in the second degree of Coy Green. On September 21st, 2016, at the location of 4431 Hip in the city of Dearborn Heights, County of Wayne, State of Michigan, did you at that time place your daughters, Kaylee and Coy Green, in a motor vehicle in the garage at that street address? And at that time, had you done something to that motor vehicle so that the exhaust from that motor vehicle would be, rather than being pumped into the outside air, be pumped into the interior of the car where your two daughters were?
Yes.
Okay, and you did that, placing your daughters in that car that had been modified to put the exhaust into the passenger compartment of the vehicle. Did you do that knowing that act had the natural tendency to cause death or great bodily harm to both Kaylee and Coy Green?
Yes.
Okay. And they did ultimately pass away from the carbon monoxide inside the interior of the vehicle, correct?
Yes.
All right, people are satisfied as to counts 1 and 2, Your Honor.
Defense is satisfied as well. All right. As to counts 3 and 4?
Counts 3 and 4. Count 3, murdering the second degree of Kara Allen. Mr. Green, on September 21st, 2016, at the Hip Street address, did you possess a firearm?
Yes.
And was that a handgun?
Yes.
Okay. And did you use that handgun to shoot Kara Allen?
Yes, I did.
Did you shoot her multiple times?
Yes.
Okay, and did you know that by shooting her multiple times, the natural tendency of that act would cause her death or would cause her great bodily harm?
Yes.
All right, people are satisfied as to count 3, Your Honor.
Defense is satisfied. Count 4?
Count 4, again, Mr. Green, at the Hip Street address on September 21st, did you use that handgun that you just admitted to possessing to repeatedly shoot Chadney Allen?
Yes.
And did you know at the time that you repeatedly shot him that the natural tendency of that act would cause his death or great bodily harm?
Yes.
And did it indeed cause his death?
Yes, I did.
Okay, people are satisfied as to count 4, Your Honor.
Defense is satisfied. All right. As to count 6?
Actually 5, torture, Judge?
I'm sorry. Count 5 first before count 6.
Thank you. At the Hip Street address on September 21st, 2016, on that date you were married to Ms. Faith Green, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and was she present at the location at the time that you shot both Kara Allen and Chadney Allen to death?
Yes.
Okay, did you shoot those children in front of their mother, Ms. Faith Green?
Yes, I did.
In addition to doing that, did you also shoot Ms. Green in the feet?
Yes.
And did you also cut Ms. Green multiple times on her face with a sharp object?
Yes.
Okay, and did you do those things with the intent to cause cruel or extreme physical or mental pain or suffering to Ms. Green?
Yes.
And do you believe that those actions actually did inflict great bodily injury or severe mental pain and suffering upon Ms. Green?
Yes.
People are satisfied as to count 5, Your Honor.
Defense is satisfied. Count 6, please.
Count 6 is assault with intent to do great bodily harm less than murder to Ms. Green. On September 21st, 2016, Mr. Green, did you make an assault upon Faith Green as we previously discussed by shooting her in the feet and also slicing her face with a sharp object?
Yes.
And did you do that with the intent to cause great bodily harm to her?
Yes.
People are satisfied, Your Honor, as to count 6.
Defense is satisfied. And finally, as to count 10.
As to count 10, Mr. Green, you've already indicated you had possession of a firearm, but during the time of while you were committing the crime of second-degree murder, torture, and or assault with intent to degrade bodily harm, did you possess that firearm?
Yes.
And that was on September 21st, 2016, correct?
Correct.
People are satisfied, Your Honor.
Defense is satisfied on factual basis. Okay.
So that was, and clearly, hey Macmillan, hey Kels, Jeannie Stubblefield, yes, the answer to your first question is yes, he was married before. He murdered, he actually murdered his first wife when she was 6 months pregnant with his child. And he married Faith Green 2 years after he had gotten out of prison after serving 16 years in prison. And looking at his face, he could have any woman. And that's interesting because that's actually how they're able to get women, because women don't look beyond the surface. They're looking at what they're looking at what they see. And that's often an advantage that's often something that works in their favor. That people, you know, that what they see aesthetically, that's looked over. I mean, that's what people are focused on. They're not focused on anything else. When it's said and done, this dude murdered his family twice. He murdered his first wife when she was 6 months pregnant with his child, while there were two minor children present there in the house that actually had to, the children that survived. Now, he didn't do anything to harm the children in the first incident, which is also indicative of the fact that his attack was very controlled, because he knew that there were two minor children in the house. One of the minor children that were in the home had special needs. He didn't hurt the children, so his attack was targeted on the mother and his unborn child. Those children, or at least one of those children, not only did they have to live with the fact that their mother had been murdered, but they also spoke out when it came to their knowledge that the man who had murdered their mother had actually murdered four more children and attempted to murder his second wife because of the sentence that he was given in the first place. He served 16 years of what was supposed to be a 25-year sentence. And the fact of the matter is, because of the heinousness of his crime, and because he didn't exhibit any type of remorse, which would have been impossible for him to exhibit because he didn't have any. He should have never been out on the streets in the first place. That should have actually been a life sentence. That's not an instance of where he snapped, clearly, because there was a deja vu of the first murder. And had he never been out, allowed to walk the streets again, the quadruple murder doesn't happen. The assault that he committed on the second wife doesn't happen. It's actually a part of the pleas to the parole board from Faith Green's father that actually gets this guy out of prison in the first place. Because one of the things that they look for is this person going to have supports in the community to prevent the recidivist? Are they going to repeat crime again? Do they have supports in the community? So from their perspective, what better supports could he have in the community besides the congregation, the church that he was actually a member of? And not only that, you have a pastor saying, not only was this a parishioner, this was my friend. He didn't just say this was a parishioner. He said this was his friend. And the other thing that the father also said was that he had seen tremendous personal growth. The things that are said between a pastor and a congregant are confidential. So from their perspective, they don't know what he could have told them. Maybe he was showing or demonstrating to the pastor remorse that the parole board didn't see. So a lot of times, people overlook everything else and, oh, well, look at this person. Look at and that's a part of the charm that they use. Do you know that one of the reasons why when Sandra interviewed the women for the book, Women Who Write, because actually her first book that had an accompanying workbook was actually How to Spot a Dangerous Man Before You Get Involved. And there was a workbook that accompanied that book. And one of the things that she talked about when she interviewed the women for the book, Women Who Write Psychopaths. Women Who Love Psychopaths and Narcissists. One of the things that she talked about was their hyposexuality and their sexual prowess. And that is what kept the women, that is what intensified the trauma bond and the Stockholm syndrome with the women. The intense sexual experience. And often the women describe sex that they had never had before, the most phenomenal sex that they'd ever had, the most exciting sex that they've ever had, an individual with an insatiable sexual appetite. And for a woman that hasn't been in a relationship for a very long time, or a woman that's divorcing, or a woman that's just bored, may actually find that very exciting and believe that that is actually his attraction to her. But in all actuality, she's the only one. Women bond through men through oxytocin. That's a God-given hormone that women excrete when they have sex with men. That's a natural way, a God-given way for us to bond with our mates. Men don't have that. That's the reason why it's not good for women to have sex with men without any expectations of there being some sort of commitment or relationship, because the more you have it, the more likely you are to bond with that individual, even if that's not your intent. That's just not the way nature designed it. Okay? So that's actually a part of the reason why when you hear people talking about the phrase soul ties, that's what they're referring to. And that's often why these are very difficult relationships to tear away from, especially when it's the most intense, gratifying sexual experience a woman has ever had. Even in the instance, if you were to remove the physical abuse from it, all abuse is not physical. Narcissistic abuse isn't a fancy name. It's nothing. It's basically something, a word that they're using in lieu of emotional abuse, psychological abuse. And that coupled with an intense sexual experience, that is what contributes to it being such a powerful trauma bond. And after the relationship ends, even when they're no longer having any contact with the person, not only are you talking about a person that's basically had their mind reprogrammed by a psychological predator, by a psychological abuser, they also have to go through what they equate with detoxing from some type of drug, because they're used to the rush that they get from those sexual experiences. But that's like kind of like a whole nother live stream. We can definitely talk about it in the future. But yeah, so I'm going to do I'm going to get ready to close out. Thank you guys for hanging out with me. It's a few more things I want you to hear, and I want you to give me your honest opinion of what it is, because this is a situation where I really this is a case rather, that I really tried to reserve judgment. But it was very difficult to wonder, what the hell what could you have been thinking? And all of this secrecy, it just reminded me of just the horror stories that we hear about families that have this churchy like background, where there's a bunch of deep, dark things going on. And this is a father that actually walked his daughter down the aisle to a convicted killer. And that's something that's odd about the situation. Like, what the fuck could he have been thinking? Not only what could she have been thinking, listen, even if she had been thinking that way, why didn't her daddy say, ain't no way in hell? Ain't no way in hell. It'll be a cold day in hell before I give my daughter away to a man that murdered his first wife. You're not talking about an instance of where he wasn't aware. He was 100% aware of the fact of what this man had been in prison for. So here's the let's listen to in closing, let's listen to the victim impact statement. And this would be Faith Green, okay, giving her victim impact statement, because he ultimately pled guilty. They allowed him to plead. Michigan doesn't have the death penalty, okay, and they allowed him to enter a guilty plea for second-degree murder, which to me is just I just don't understand that. I don't understand that, because clearly he premeditated the murders. He actually had to go to a hardware store and purchase equipment to modify the vehicle that he murdered his two youngest children in. So where does the second-degree murder come into place? I don't know. I guess they've just figured he's never getting out of prison anyway. You know, and it's unfortunate that Detroit does not have the death penalty. So let's listen to her victim impact statement.
Faith Green. Okay. Go ahead, Your Honor. I'm not happy. I'm not satisfied with the outcome. There's no punishment that fits the crime. Not even torture and death would be justice. Your justice will come when you burn in hell for all eternity for murdering 4 innocent children, all because you're insecure as a man. Plus the other 2 lives you took. You are a con artist, you are a monster, you are a devil in disguise. You are now forever exposed. I've thought over and over again what I would say, even though it doesn't even matter. First of all, I am not and did not and will not suffer like you intended for me to do. What you tried to do didn't work. I am and was a damn great mother to all of my children. I was their mother and father. I'm the one who took out the time with each and every one of them. I taught them how to do things as well as people in my family and friends. I taught Chadney how to treat a woman with respect, how to fill out a job application, mock interviews, how to pay bills, encouraging him to give his all in his schooling, producing movies and his drawings. He was a great artist. He graduated from Spec Tower for digital media arts. He wanted to be a producer to make movies. I taught Kara to stay focused, aim high. I showed her how to drive, how a young lady is to carry herself in an orderly manner. Be all that you can be. Try out for everything that you're interested in doing. Pursuing higher education, we were filling out college applications. She wanted to be an OBGYN doctor. She was going to graduate this year from high school. I taught Coy to be open to new things like learning a new language, be confident in doing her schoolwork and in herself. She loved doing arts and crafts with me, letting her imagination run wild. She loved dressing up and putting on my high heels. She would make me laugh, looking at me over her glasses, like a little old lady. She loved ballet, cheerleading, and planting flowers with me. My Kaylee had the greatest memory. She loved singing. She loved to carry her purse, which was always filled with hand sanitizer and lip gloss. She loved getting her nails painted and sometimes doing it herself. She also loved ballet and cheerleading. She loved balloons and playing outside. I taught them to be giving, loving, and respectful, to help others, to volunteer. They were not selfish children. Coy and Kaylee were learning about kids less fortunate than themselves. I took them with me to purchase items for Christmas and explain to them what we were doing to make them happy. I always encouraged them and told them that they can do anything they put their minds to do. Those are the lives that you took. You tried to separate them from each other. They are siblings who loved each other and spent time with one another. Trying to split them up didn't work. They are together more than ever. Chadney and Kara are still watching over the little sisters, Coy and Kaylee, forever. I carried each one of them in my womb for 9 months and raised them. Nothing or no one, sure as hell, not you, can break me or break my bond with them. But while I stand up here trembling with fear, I put on my bravest face to be in the same room with the man who murdered all 4 of my children. 2 of them violently in front of me with a gun, Chadney and Kara. And he killed my other 2 babies, Coy and Kaylee, with a hose that ran from the tailpipe of his car to where they were innocently sleeping. the devastation that it has actually done to me and my family. My short-term memory is gone. Doctors tell me it's my brain protecting me from the memories of my children being shot in their heads right in front of me while I was gagged, duct taped, and zip tied. Every time I find strength to get out of bed, as soon as I walk, I'm in extreme pain, sharp pain, from where he shot me in my foot. They don't know if I'll ever walk again without pain. Think about that for a second. Never being able to walk without pain. My doctors say I have post-traumatic stress disorder. That's where the migraines and nightmares come from. Sometimes I dream of the night all this happened and wake up screaming and sweating, thinking that I can save my children somehow. Then I realize that the nightmare is actually reality, and my children are really gone, and I try to find the strength to start my day somehow. Other times, there's just crazy nightmares that I wake up from in fear and try to understand them, but I'm told that they all link back to this horrific experience I have had. I can't think of the last time I really rested without medication. I can still feel the zip ties around my wrist, and it triggers horrible memories of that night. There's times I find myself drifting off into thought and then realize I'm not thinking of anything. I'm empty. Lost. I'm lost, not really knowing what to do with myself, just existing day to day. I miss my children so much that words will never be able to explain. All I ever wanted to be was a mother, a wife, have a happy family, raise my children to be productive members of society, and be happy. The reality I face now is this will never happen for me. Time will never heal this wound. I will always be empty. A part of me will always be missing. If the day ever comes when I do wake up, it is not the first thing that I think about. When I look in the mirror, I will always be reminded by the scars he put on my face, cutting me from my ears to my chin with a razor blade box cutter. The pain on the left side of my face never goes away. He cut me so deep that it severed multiple nerves that may never heal correctly. I lost so much blood. I was in critical condition for days. I should have died. Some days I wish I would have. He has scarred me for life. My whole family is devastated emotionally by what has happened. But it has extremely been hard on my parents. They love their grandchildren with all their hearts. Most days, my mother has a hard time getting out of bed and has been in the hospital a few times, but my father is taking it the hardest. He's not the same person he once was. The stress has taken a toll on his health. 2 weeks ago, he was taken to the hospital because he had a stroke. I honestly don't know where to go from here. I'm numb. There's a hole in my heart and soul that can never be repaired. The loss to me is so big that I will never truly recover for the rest of my life. I will be forever in pain and heartbreak. This wound will never heal. This wound will never heal. I would like to thank the court and you, Your Honor, for the time you have allowed me to speak. I would like to thank the prosecutor's office and staff and all the police officers who helped in this case. In closing, I understand the recommendation of the sentence, but I would like to recommend, as a victim myself and the mother of all 4 murdered children, life in prison without the chance of parole. Thank you, Faith Green.
So that was Faith Green's victim impact statement, y'all. And like I said, it's one of those cases where it's a fascinating case because what you have here is a serial killer of spouses. And like I said, it just gave me those, if you all remember that movie, The Stepfather vibes, where he would go, everything would start out fantastic with the family. And then once people would start to see certain things kind of like manifest or just start to ask questions. Like, where it's always a huge red flag when you're dating a person or when you're meeting a person and they don't have any family or friends around. You're not able to meet their family. Like, where's it? Now, if they're all deceased, that's understandable. Or if the family is toxic, that's understandable. But what about their friends? If that's to be said of their family, if their family of origin is fucked up or whatever, we get the gist of that. But what about their friends? What about their colleagues? What about their coworkers? The people that they work with? What about the people that know them? For you not to be able to have a conversation with any of those people or meet any of those people at any point in time, that's a huge red flag. And often what they do is, like, when you look at that picture, perfect, when you look at when you look at that picture right there, that's Faith, Kara, Chadney, Coy, and Kayla with their grandfather. It looks like a normal, happy family. The other thing that I noted was that there's a difference in between shooting a person close range, point blank range in the head, which is the way he executed her children. He did that in front of her. It's no less heinous to asphyxiate children in a vehicle that you've rigged with carbon monoxide because you know the outcome of it is going to be death. But I think that not only did he have a disdain and a hatred for his wife, clearly that came across. I seen the same lack of remorse that was probably evident to the parole board when he was up for review regarding the murder of his first wife. He's devoid of any remorse. You can see that in his face. And there's a difference in between the way that he murdered her two children from a previous marriage and the way, nonetheless, it's still a heinous murder, but it's a different type of murder. That's up close and personal. And he's doing that in front of their mother because he wants that to be etched in her mind forever. Make no mistake about it. If he wanted her dead, he would have killed her the same way he did the first wife. He wanted her alive and in suffering. The other thing that I noted in the victim impact statement was that she said you tried to separate them. And now they're together even more. Like, what does she mean by that? The only thing that could be meant by that is that while the children were alive, he was trying to be divisive. Although they were in the same household, although they were siblings, he was attempting to be divisive. She made reference to him being insecure. She's saying that you will forever be exposed. And that kind of says to me, well, maybe, there were things that he was able to successfully fool them about, the second family. The reason why he was so secretive about his past is because that allowed him to start over with a clean slate. That's why it's always a red flag anytime a person's past is obliterated. Even if they don't have any contact with their family of origin. There should be somebody from that person. You mean to tell me they lived in the same in the same place? And none of the people that knew that he had murdered his previous wife, none of those people's path ever crossed? I just find that anything is possible, but I just find it to be improbable. I think that's one of those things that a lot of times people see and they take the attitude of, well, it's not my business. And if it's not my business, if it works for her, I don't know. This is like one of those cases that just, it was cringy. Okay. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'm not certain which, and again, like I said, this isn't the only case. It's not an isolated case. There were other cases where a man had murdered his previous spouse or his previous significant other. And for whatever reason, a woman felt that he would make a suitable dating partner, a suitable husband, significant other, father of children. And it's just beyond my comprehension as to why that would be. Okay. So thank you guys for working with me through all the technical difficulties. I imagine as time goes on, I will get better. Okay. In addition to, I'm going to be working and working on my editing, and before all is said and done, I'll pull it all together. Okay. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. I appreciate you for the last 2 hours and 20 minutes. Okay. And I'll catch up with you guys the next time. Peace. Enjoy the remainder of your day. Oh, and tomorrow I'll have a call-in number, guys. For those that don't want to hit the link, I'll have a call-in number. Okay. Take care, everybody.